Hello and welcome to Moving Through Menopause. I'm so happy and thrilled to be joined by Dr. Susan Baumgaertel. And Dr. Susan, hello, Dr. Susan. She's jetted in virtually all the way from the United States. And she's making me feel very slightly homesick because, of course, I did live there for a time, Susan, didn't I?
Colorado, right?
Colorado. Remind me where you are again.
I'm in Seattle, Washington, on the coast.
Ah, on the coast. Yeah. Well, Colorado was just about as far as you could get from the coast. Oh, but I did love it there. We are here tonight to talk about Susan's passion project. She's a practicing physician and born out of her time coping with isolation. What do you do when you've got nowhere to go and nobody to chat with? I know, I'll build a website. That's what you do. And so Susan's passion project, the Menopause Menu, was born. And this is something that, our interests collided at this point when we start to talk about menopause. And so I'm so thrilled to welcome you, Susan. Thank you so much for coming along and having a chat tonight.
Thank you, Philippa. It's wonderful to be here. And this is my first, shall we say, cross the pond adventure. So I'm really excited to chat with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And what we have in common is that we're very passionate about sharing educational resources with people to help guide them on this journey, because you said yourself just before we turned the button live that life is indeed a journey, and particularly for me around this time of menopause, I found so much change, physically, emotionally, in terms of my life situation, children flying the coop, parents becoming more dependent, perhaps. So, there's such a lot of transition going on around this time, and it's a lot for people to deal with alone, isn't it?
It is. And as we look around the world, my gosh, we could spend hours talking about the pandemic, but we won't. I think and we also won't talk about politics because that will go nowhere. But we're suffering. We collectively in the world are suffering. I think as a physician, my 25-year career full time, except time off for a baby, the last year and a half, probably the most difficult time of my life. And I'm not even an inpatient physician, but in a way, I had even more stress in terms of, I wasn't in the hero group, and wasn't in the ICU and so forth. Amazing people working very hard. But unlike people I know or friends or patients even who are at home, either working from home or maybe even kind of bored if they're retired and not doing much and can't go anywhere, I was just working 16-hour days and 16 hours every day, and it was utterly exhausting. And I know it seems counterintuitive because I'm going to talk about sleep in a minute probably, but I honestly think that that's where my passion project really started to crystallize. I mean, I've been thinking about menopause, the journey of menopause, with most of my pre, peri, postmenopausal women for decades. But it really, I had to have an outlet during all of this stressful time. And so that's how Menopause Menu was born. And it's a free website. It's just available for all as a resource, including men. And anyone who wants to learn about menopause, frankly, it's not a women's only club. And I love the fact that it's organic. I mean, it's growing, it's changing. I add to the content. I'm writing a book, of course, isn't that the next thing people do is write a book. But a lot of it really started from a different program that a lot of people know if they know me, called Menu for Change. And that was from a number of years ago. And it was a 7-year program, which was intended initially to help men and women, but mostly women, with weight management. And I'd say the average age was about 59, 60. And although it originally started as a weight management program, it gradually shifted and blossomed more into a kind of wellness program. And I almost hesitate to use that word because in America, the insurance industry has ruined that term forever. So wellness is like a checkbox on an insurance form. But to me, the essence of that, really looking at weight loss as a side effect of what you're doing, not as the goal. And I think coming back to menopause, boy, oh boy, if I had a dime, the famous phrase, if I had a dime for every time I heard someone say, and a menopausal woman say, oh my gosh, I eat better than I have before, I'm exercising more, and where'd that 10 pounds come from? And it's always down here, So, everyone's journey is unique, but there's so many common similarities. There's so many themes. And I think that that's really what I hope to help people, help anyone kind of navigate and kind of turn inward and look at what's important for them as they think about their weight and other things that pertain to menopause.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely have experienced that this is something that people might focus on, the weight around the middle particularly. And yet there'll be all sorts of other things that are coexisting and probably contributing to this, weight that is sitting around the middle. And so we really would be remiss not to deal with it in this holistic kind of fashion. You talked a little bit briefly about sleep there. The contribution of sleeplessness to our capacity to sort of hold on to weight. And so, dealing with it in the round is really important.
You can go down that rabbit hole. I mean, I honestly think the internet is dangerous to, look up how to sleep better. Some of it is so painfully, ridiculously simple. Get more sleep, quality sleep, not just quantity. And I think sometimes folks can get a little too hung up on what's called sleep hygiene and say, well, I'm doing all that. I have the bed very quiet and it's dark and it's not too hot. And only use the bed for sleep and sex, and I won't balance my checkbook and I won't watch TV. But it's much more than just sleep hygiene, especially as you're going through these perimenopausal phases and actually well beyond. So, I hope people realize whenever I say post-menopause, post means after. Once you're through menopause, you're post-menopause until you can be 85, you're still post-menopause. So it's not like suddenly there's a magic time period, boom, you're done, everything's reset. I mean, all of these things kind of trickle on throughout the rest of our journey in our lives. So how you address that and how you set that pattern, because it's going to change, it's going to shift. But yeah, I realized, and I left a long-term job recently, which was heroic and terrifying at the same time. I feel like a 100-pound gorilla is off my shoulders. But I noticed something fascinating, and I do not brag about that 16-hour workday. In fact, I look back and I'm in horror of it. But now that I have the opportunity to get more sleep, guess what? Less stress, and by literally snapping my fingers, I think I've lost 15 pounds. Now, I was never on a weight loss journey. Like, my goal was never to lose weight. And I think that is something really important to grasp. Again, I really think weight loss should be a side effect and not the goal. I mean, honestly, I over the decades, I've lost track of a woman who would say, oh, I jumped on the scale this morning and I lost 3 pounds. Like, woohoo! Like, why should the fact that you've lost 3 pounds make you super happy and excited and you have a great day? And then on the contrary, oh my God, I gained 2 pounds. Oh, crap. Why should that matter? Why should
this is the thing though, because I totally know that feeling. And you know what? Sometimes it's because the scales are broken. But seriously, it actually reads wrong. But it's it still makes me feel better.
That's why I think it's ingrained, dare I say, society or Hollywood or whatever word you want to use, but I think it's ingrained in us. You know, if you're larger, or you have some rolls, or you have a little belly, you know, like that's not acceptable. And I think that's baloney. You know, we should steer away from that. I've really learned over time when I compliment someone, especially a woman, and I say, "Gosh, you look great." I see that, and I'll say, like, "You look like you have great energy," or your skin looks great. You know, you just come from a run, or I love that color on you. And that is different than saying, "Wow, you look really good. Have you lost weight?" You know, there's no judgment there, and it's a true compliment to someone's inner spirit, not what they physically look like.
Yeah. And and I mean, this is something that I know for myself personally, I have carried with me since my teenage years, you know, as a developing young woman, when your body starts to change and you are not somehow prepared for that. And that, you know, particularly when I think I was early with that, you know, so I was changing before everybody else who was still like a little twiglet. And, you know, I was burgeoning, and it didn't really feel good because I was somehow now suddenly different to everybody else. You know, and this really, you know, that somehow traveled with me, whether I wanted it to or not.
I think statistically, I don't know, but I'll bet you anything, 98% of women are like that. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. I mean, we all have a background. We were all little girls once. We all went through different phases in our life where we didn't perhaps like our body, like teenage acne. But you know, there's a saying, you know, puberty is like, you know, menopause. Menopause is like puberty in reverse. Like, I don't think that that's true, except for maybe the hormone imbalance, because what we have at our age is wisdom. And I think we look back and we say, wow, why was I worried about that? Or why was I so concerned? But that's okay. Own our adventure, own our journey. There's nothing wrong. We don't have to go backward and say, darn it, I should really have changed my mind. No, but we can have that opportunity now to restructure it and to you know, again, this is a little overused, but, you know, self-care and self-love. And I think that is where you get value and strength, especially being a woman going through menopause. You know, I'm post-menopause. And I think there's a new appreciation of your body. First of all, the parts that don't work, and getting to know those parts that are not working the way you'd like them to, either getting at peace with them, or saying, wait, I can approach this differently. I can do it differently. And so getting back to the weight, you know, that is a true thing for most, not all, but most women who've gone through menopause who are so frustrated by their little belly. And you know, they talk about what size pants they are, and, you know, they can't fit in them. And it's very frustrating. And I would never make light of that because it's very frustrating. And, you know, so pulling back and looking at, you know, the 4 pillars, or the kind of things that really do impact weight in a different way is really important.
Yes. I mean, I think for me, there's the health sort of argument that I think is appropriate. You know, that the incidence of coronary heart disease is greater for women after menopause.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's insulin resistance, there's diabetes, there's heart disease. You can talk about brain health. You can talk about osteoporosis, that's bone health. I mean, the list goes on and on, not to be depressing, but, you know, and that's where there's an intersection. I think there, you know, is it all just a post-menopausal journey, or is it aging? And I think they're not one and the same, but there's a lot of interplay. And so, you know, as the further away you get from menopause, you know, those postmenopausal issues are changing and shifting because of our aging process, you know, through the decades. And so that is, I think, an area that we all need to do better. We need in society better promoting, better teaching, I love kind of adding in the holistic flavors, and I know what you do is so important as a physiotherapist. You're called a physical therapist, but I know you do yoga and Pilates, and you work with people's, musculoskeletal systems, which are so incredibly important to support everything else.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, sarcopenia is a feature, as well as osteoporosis, osteopenia. And there's no doubt that the hormonal, it's really the sudden deterioration that occurs over that period of menopause transition, that 5 to 7 years when the changes are occurring at a steeper sort of rate. And then things level off and it becomes more like what happens to a man, Mm-hmm. But that step change is what puts us at this slight disadvantage, isn't it? And so that's the thing for me, to know that it's not quite the same trajectory that a man will take, and because we'll just have this step change around that time when the hormonal shifts are occurring at the biggest rate. And so you're right, it is about that time, it is about the longer term, absolutely, because the time is marching on, it's not going backwards, is it? Sadly.
And then, of course, there's a subset of people, of women who had hysterectomies and had their ovaries removed with or without, ovaries removed, or if they've had cancer, or they've had chemo, or they've had treatments which have literally flicked that switch. And they are in instantaneous menopause. And boy, oh boy, that is tough. I've had so many patients like that. And, your journey, my journey, may be over a number of years, but to do that overnight, it's brutal. And I think that is where this is kind of like the bits that aren't always talked about. Like society doesn't talk about vaginal dryness very much. They also don't talk about mental health. And when it comes to menopause, mental health is paramount, because stress can go up. Family stress, look at where you are in terms of your life. Maybe there's financial pressures, maybe maybe a parent has died, maybe a child's floundering, and here you are dealing with your hormones, and there is a lot of depression, there's a lot of anxiety, and getting back to the weight, don't forget about eating disorders. There's so many folks who've had eating disorders for lengthy periods of time, and maybe they're actually even unrecognized or undiagnosed. That can pop into the picture too. And so it gets very complicated. And to say it's just, you're fine, wait a couple of years, you're good. That's not what you're saying. But unfortunately, people go to their doctors, and maybe some who are not very in tune with this process, or they're, I hate to say it, way too busy and not able to talk about it. Or many women get their information from their best friend, or their mom, or their aunt, or their big sister, and then somehow their kind of mysteries that still aren't solved, or things that are perpetuated that really aren't true. And that's, again, coming back to Menopause Menu, where I want to make sure it's a resource, because if you go down that rabbit hole on the internet, you can end up in some very heavy-duty medical literature very quickly, and you have to look up every word, because that's not your job. Or you can go to a Hollywood nameless, faceless, won't mention the name site, where it's just a bunch of baloney. And how do you kind of know what's true? There's just the TMI, too much information, is not helpful when you are a bit stressed trying to deal with those menopausal issues.
No, and I mean, you can feel really very vulnerable at that time, and not knowing where to turn. And this was really my experience, which is hence what has motivated me to really become better informed. You speak of the mental health issues and anxiety and depression, something that it's out of the biochemistry, because you do begin to question, why is this happening? Why do I feel so bad? And I'm depressed, and that defines you as a human. It's never really and so you go to the doctor and they offer you antidepressants and don't sort of suggest that the shift in the biochemistry may actually be contributing to this, and at the root of it, and that if we manage that better, then the difference is night and day.
No, I mean, there's absolutely time and a place for medications, absolutely. But I think that to think of, I guess I could say, Western medicine just as the answer. I think there should be an interplay between kind of the Eastern philosophy, holistic approaches, Western medicine. I'm a strong, staunch supporter of evidence-based medicine, and not just whimsical thing. Oh, work for me. Maybe it'll work for you. In fact, that's the whole premise of the diet industry, isn't it? Oh, I lost 40 pounds. You could too. If only you just ate pickles for 3 months. Like, it's absurd. So, but that's the very essence of, I think, the desperation, where a woman is like, well, I'll do anything as long as I can kind of get jump started. Jump starting. I used to kind of accept that as like, okay, let's, get the first couple of pounds going. And now I try to talk people out of using that word, because jump start, it's like jump starting a motorcycle, and then you're off and running. But jump starting weight loss by kind of doing a cleanse or fasting for 6 days and not eating anything except for water, it is harmful. And the older you get, it becomes more harmful. I've hospitalized people for kidney failure and liver failure because they tried some really hardcore restricted diets. And that's so getting back to getting away from the guilt, getting away from that, mental health kind of penalty box, where every woman I know that's probably more pre and peri, maybe a little less postmenopause, said, oh my God, I just bit my husband's head off. Like, I didn't mean to do that. And I realized as I was saying it, I didn't mean to do that, but I couldn't control myself. And then I'm so frustrated. And it's just like this, the very negative self-talk. So we have to pay more attention to that.
Yeah, undoubtedly. That interplay, as you say, between all these different nutrition rather than nourishment, rather than calories, that conversation of if we fuel the brain, fuel the body, then it's going to work a whole lot better than if we think of depriving it of nourishment. And the effect overall, once you start to fuel yourself with appropriate kinds of sources, then or healthful sources, perhaps I would say, then the knock on is that sleep is better, the mood is enhanced. So there is, it's that bi-directional nature, isn't it? That working from here up and here down, and sort of how do we break into that cycle, and I guess that's different approaches will speak to different people.
Yeah, no, I think recently, this is not my quote, sitting is the new smoking, right?
Oh yes.
And I've heard that many times, and people who sit all day, they're doomed. But I think, and maybe this would be my quote, self-care is the new mantra for defining kind of personal wellness. And if we can't focus on nutrition, I don't use that word diet, or actually I don't even say exercise very much, I say movement, and sleep and stress management. And stress is huge when you think about the whole cortisol and hormone effects. That's kind of almost in a nutshell. I mean, there's so many other peripheral factors like social connection, but I think that is where proverbial money is, and that's where you can do the most good for yourself. Not just like, oh, but only if you knock off 5 pounds, but if you can focus on those areas, absolutely, you will see weight loss as a side effect. And even if you don't, you will see a better you, and you will feel better. You will function better. Some people's goal, and really goal setting is the sky's the limit. Some people just want to bend over and be able to tie their shoes.
Yes.
Others want to get ready for a half marathon, and there's everything in between. And so forget what your neighbor's doing. What is helpful for you, and how do you feel better? How do you get your energy better? And I've seen some very, very skinny, very successful patients who've lost lots of weight, depressed, anxious, not doing well, feeling terrible, having pain issues. So weight loss is not the holy grail. It's just part of the journey. And I know it's a frustrating part, but it shouldn't just be isolated as kind of the one thing.
No, and it's a raw figure that can be misleading when we look at body composition. The fact that muscle really does weigh more than fat, and having more muscle as a proportion of your body mass is going to be essentially better all around. Just being able to stand on one leg, by the way, Susan, the ability to stand on one leg is going to potentially contribute to our longevity.
That core. If you're engaged, I'm sitting here comfortably in my chair, not engaging my core at all. But if you are engaging your core, you're absolutely right. And again, that's kind of where it's not just the menopausal journey, but aging. We're losing our lean body mass is getting lower, and therefore, there's more fat. Doesn't necessarily replace it, but it certainly can if you're not being attentive to your nutritional intake.
Yeah.
But you do have to be more active in ways that you didn't quite have to, perhaps, before menopause.
Well, I think that's actually right. In fact, you have to be active to stay the same. So, in order to make a shift in the positive direction, imagine how much that's going to take. So, and so this is the thing, that it's never more important than it is in middle life. And actually, the great news is that you actually can make a really big impact by introducing movement, as you say, into your life at this time, in middle life. And sometimes I say it's a little bit annoying that the gains will be just as great as if you've done it all along. As somebody who's been doing it all along, sometimes that comes as a bitter pill to swallow. But, that is the reality of the situation. That, on the other hand, don't leave it too late.
And I think that, from a medical career, there's so many things that are invisible. You can't see high blood pressure. You can see effects from high blood pressure. You can't see high cholesterol. You can't really see diabetes until maybe it's too late. You can't see heart disease. All these things you can't necessarily see. And so we all know that if you bomb down a ski hill and you crash and you have total body cast, that's very visual. You've fractured a whole bunch of bones. But there's nothing, you can't look at me and say, does she have hypertension, high blood pressure? You can't. And so there's no reminders. And I think that's where people look in the mirror and they say, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight. Maybe that is a reminder in some ways indirectly that yes, we do need to think about that. But there's so many other things that are going on as we age and as we think about the postmenopausal journey that are just as important. But weight loss, weight does matter because it does contribute to insulin resistance. It does contribute to, glucose control, pre-diabetes, diabetes, heart disease. I mean, that is still very, very much tangible. And, if we take out cancer and we take out COVID, heart disease is still like the killer. And then, of course, we get into things like breast cancer. So there's a lot there. We don't have to live in fear, but I think we have to pay attention more so than premenopause.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that oh gosh, I'm getting the echo again. The thing that I sort of have experienced is that we can kind of just very gradually and slowly experience a declining state of wellness overall, if you want to call it that. That is almost imperceptible. And that people don't necessarily feel ill. It's just that maybe they don't feel 100% well.
Yeah.
And that really, for me, I would love it if we could all feel really well, you know, not just kind of not notice how you feel, but actually really feel well. And so this is the thing. How do you kind of, what are those parameters where you might notice that you're maybe not quite as firing on all cylinders? And the other thing, of course, that people start to accept that that is inevitable somehow. And that I, you know, and I really hate that for people, that we would think, and not to be too mean about doctors, but you know, doctors do start to talk about age being a contributory factor. You know, nowadays it's in your 30s that word age might just be mentioned. You know, what's your thoughts around that?
I agree. I think that everybody quotes studies, and the study participants have to be a certain sex and age and so on and so forth. So, you know, but you're exactly right in terms of having that be the premise for, oh, well, don't worry, you're X amount of years old. Oh my gosh. I remember a woman who was 89. I think she died when she was 96. But when she was 89, she was still working as the registrar part-time for a college. And she loved to work around the young folks who were like in their 60s. It was so funny. And it kept her mind alive. And she was so vibrant. And holy cow, you know, if you think retirement is the next step is your coffin, that's ridiculous. It's a gateway to the next fabulous stage of your life, in my opinion. But I've also seen people who are in their late 60s and they look like they need to find kind of a retirement home. So there's so many factors. There's genetics. There's there's heritage, racial, socioeconomic, and the list goes on in terms of why people are what they are, how they age. But you're exactly right. I just don't think we should ever use that number to say, oh, posh, you're fine now. No.
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we agree.
I'm a little unconventional, so.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why we obviously get along, Susan. Well, you know, I really love talking about this topic, and I could go on and on and on, but I think the idea that I keep coming back to is this multifaceted approach, but that different individuals have different goals, and and it's not for us to choose what they should do or how they should go about it, merely to offer support and information, and if they did need a bit of guidance, then I'd be very happy to help, as I'm sure you would. But to thrive as we move forwards on this onward journey. I always laugh when they say that in the air, when you're on an aeroplane. Have a fabulous onward journey, or whatever they say. But that's it, isn't it? We're all on this journey together, and let's get along, get together, help one another. Use reliable sources for your information, and interrogate it. Don't just take it as somebody told me this, and so I'm going to accept that. Get curious about all this stuff. And if you need people to, like I say, Susan's got a fabulous website. I mean, it's absolutely busting full of information, Susan. I don't know where you found all the time.
Well, I feel like I'm just getting started, honestly. So check back regularly, because I'm adding to it. And I know libraries are a little old-fashioned because no one is going to a library these days. But I see it like a library. It's a resource. It's you come back and you get another book and you check this out and you check that out. It's not where you have to sit and comb through every subject, but maybe you have 5 minutes. You just want to think like, oh, let's see if I can think about, there's like a 2-minute meditation thing on there I want to try. Oh, great idea. So I hope that people get the right flavor from it, and I'll let you know when the book comes out.
Oh, yes, definitely. We'll have another chat when the book comes out. And I love that you said get the right flavor for the menopause menu. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know it's only morning for you and you've got the whole rest of the day ahead of you. So have a very wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again so much. It's lovely to chat, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa, and goodbye. Take care.
Thank you. Take care now.